Lyra moved gracefully through the grand halls of her palace, her long silver robes brushing softly against the polished floor. She had lived most of her life among the noble houses of her people, a high-tech alien race known for their sharp minds, political cunning, and strict social rules. Diplomacy and power played every day like a careful game of strategy. Lyra had always been prepared for intrigue, deception, and danger. But now, for the first time, she thought she could rest. She had married a human named Ethan, a quiet, gentle soul who seemed far removed from the intrigues of her world. Ethan lived quietly in the palace. He rarely spoke, preferring to help around the house, cook meals that smelled strange but delicious, and listen when Lyra shared her thoughts. His calmness had been a comfort to her. She liked the simplicity he brought into her life, a stark contrast to the constant scheming and whispers of her alien society. He never argued, never demanded attention, and seemed content with a quiet life. Lyra had laughed with her friends, telling them, "He is peaceful. Nothing about him scares me." Her friends had looked doubtful. "Humans are unpredictable," one had warned, shaking her multi-limbed head. "You think he is calm now, but one day he may surprise you." Lyra had smiled. "He is gentle. He is nothing like the rest of your species," she replied. Deep down, a small part of her wondered if she truly knew humans at all, but she pushed the thought aside. Even so, small things made her curious. Ethan noticed more than he should, she realized. He saw when someone lingered too long near the palace, gates when a servant's eyes darted nervously, or when a strange energy flickered in the air. He asked questions quietly, almost casually, but she noticed how sharp his mind was. At night, Lyra sometimes heard soft sounds from the training room. She had peeked once and seen him moving with a sword. His motions were precise, almost like a dance, fluid and practiced. When she asked him about it, he only smiled and said, "Just keeping fit." The months passed peacefully. Lyra began to trust that life with Ethan would remain calm. She enjoyed his company, his quiet smiles, and the way he listened without judgment. The palace felt safer somehow with him around, though she did not understand why. One day, during a morning stroll in the palace gardens, Lyra noticed unusual activity. A few shadows moved across the trees, too large and deliberate to be animals. She stopped and watched, her heart tightening. "Ethan," she called softly. He appeared beside her instantly, as if he had been waiting. His calm eyes scanned the gardens. "Something is not right," he said quietly. Lyra felt a strange comfort in the calmness of his voice. She pointed toward the shadows. Before she could react further, the shadows shifted and figures emerged. Tall, masked and armed. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Assassins. Her mind raced. She had read about political attacks, secret plots, and murder attempts, but she had never imagined one happening in her own home. Panic surged through her and she instinctively stepped back. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of her. His hand rested lightly on his belt, where she suddenly noticed the hilt of a sword. He drew it silently. The blade gleamed in the soft sunlight, thin, sharp, and perfectly balanced. Lyra could not move. She had thought her husband was quiet, simple, and harmless. Now he looked like something else entirely, something dangerous. The assassins attacked. Their movements were fast, practiced, and deadly, but Ethan was faster. He moved with a fluid precision that Lyra had never imagined. The sword sliced through the air, blocking attacks, redirecting strikes and disarming opponents with skill that made her gasp. He did not shout or show anger. He moved calmly, almost mechanically, yet with a clear understanding of every move the assassins made. Lyra watched, frozen, as Ethan protected her, moving between her and the attackers. The garden was suddenly a battlefield, but he seemed completely in control. Within minutes, the attackers lay incapacitated or fleeing. The courtyard was quiet again, the only sound the soft breathing of the humans and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Ethan sheathed his sword and turned to her. "Are you safe?" he asked. His voice was calm, gentle, and entirely normal, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Lyra nodded, unable to speak at first. She stared at him, realizing that the man she thought she knew was far more than he had seemed. He had skill, courage, and power hidden behind his quiet demeanor. Her mind raced with questions. What are you?" she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "I am just a human," he said simply. "We learn to survive in ways your people cannot imagine." His words made Lyra even more curious. Humans were simple, he said, but also capable of extraordinary things. She realized her entire understanding of her husband had been incomplete. For the rest of the day, she tried to act normal. They ate breakfast, walked through the palace halls, and spoke lightly of small matters. But inside, Lyra's mind kept returning to the fight in the garden. She remembered the speed, the control, the calmness of his movements. Her husband, the quiet man she had thought so simple, was extraordinary. That night, Lyra watched him again as he quietly practiced in the training room. The sword flashed under the dim lights, slicing through the air with precision. For the first time, she felt a deep respect for him. She had married a quiet human, yes, but now she understood that quiet could hide something far more powerful than words. The morning sun glimmered on the sleek towers of Lyra's home planet, painting the sky in soft gold and purple. Lyra walked. Along the palace balcony, her mind restless. Since the garden attack, she had thought endlessly about Ethan. How could someone so quiet be so deadly? He had moved with speed, precision, and calm that no alien warrior she knew could match. She shook her head. Maybe it was foolish to wonder so much. He was her husband. That should have been enough. Yet she could not stop thinking about him. Humans were simple, yes, but Ethan was far from simple. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden alert. The palace security system beeped urgently. A holographic screen flickered to life, showing a large group of armed figures approaching the estate. Lyra froze. The assassins in the garden had not acted alone. This was bigger. This was organized. "Ethan," she called softly, her voice trembling. He appeared beside her immediately, as if he had been waiting. His calm eyes scanned the approaching figures. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. There was no panic in his voice, only a quiet authority that made Lyra feel safe despite the danger. The attackers moved swiftly, their suits glinting with high-tech armor. Lyra could see their weapons, energy rifles, plasma blades, and strange devices she had never seen before. Her heart raced. She had been trained in diplomacy, in negotiation, and in observation. She knew the odds. Without Ethan, she would not survive this attack. Ethan drew his sword, the familiar glint catching the sunlight. Lyra noticed the small details, the grip worn perfectly to his hand, the blade's perfect balance, and the way he stood, ready yet relaxed. He was calm, confident, and lethal. The first wave of attackers reached the palace gates. The human guards opened fire, but their energy weapons barely slowed the intruders. Lyra held her breath as Ethan moved forward. In a blur, he deflected plasma blasts with the edge of his sword, stepping with such speed that the attackers could not land a single strike. One mercenary lunged at him with a glowing blade. Ethan sidestepped, spun, and disarmed the attacker in one fluid motion. Another aimed a rifle at his chest. Ethan's sword flashed, slicing through the barrel before the shot could fire. Every move was calculated, precise, and deadly, but never. Cruel Lyra could not look away. She had always believed humans were fragile, weak, and vulnerable. Now she saw the truth. Humans could adapt, improvise, and survive situations that alien warriors might fail in. Her husband was proof. "Stay behind me," Ethan said again, glancing at her briefly. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but it carried an unspoken command. Lyra obeyed, hiding behind a column, her eyes fixed on him. The attackers were skilled, but they had underestimated a human's ingenuity. Ethan moved like water, flowing between them, using their own momentum against them. He disarmed, deflected, and incapacitated without hesitation. In moments, the courtyard was littered with unconscious intruders. Yet the fight was not over. A larger figure appeared at the top of the stairs, a mercenary leader, tall and heavily armored. He carried a weapon that hummed with dangerous energy. He moved toward Ethan with confidence, assuming this quiet human would fall like the others. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. He assessed the weapon and the attacker, calculating. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, he closed the distance. The fight was almost a blur. Sparks flew as sword met energy blade. Lyra gasped. Every step Ethan took was deliberate, every move precise. Within seconds, the leader's weapon was shattered, and he lay defeated. The remaining attackers looked at each other and then fled. Ethan did not chase them. He turned to Lyra and simply said, "You are safe now." His voice was calm, his demeanor unchanged. He did not boast. He did not celebrate. He had protected her, and that was enough. Lyra stepped forward, her legs trembling. She could hardly believe what she had seen. "Ethan, how?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He smiled faintly. "Humans survive by learning, by adapting. We notice what others miss. We react to danger quickly, and we protect those we care about." His words wait. The palace was quiet after the morning's chaos. Lyra walked slowly through the corridors, her mind still replaying the events of the day. She could not stop thinking about Ethan, the man she had married, the quiet human who had just saved her life. The image of him moving with speed, precision, and calm lingered in her mind like a vivid dream she could not wake from. She found him in the training room again, his sword resting against his shoulder. The soft hum of alien machinery in the background contrasted with his quiet presence. He had been practicing for hours, but he did not seem tired. Lyra stood at the doorway, her heart pounding. "Ethan," she said softly. He turned, giving her a small, calm smile. "You were still thinking about today," he said. There was no judgment in his voice, only quiet understanding. I want to know," Lyra began, her voice shaky. "How you do it. How you fight like that. How you survive like that." Ethan's expression remained calm, but his eyes seemed to hold a hint of sadness. "Humans are not as weak as your people, believe. We grow in ways others cannot imagine. We survive on instincts, on training, on learning from every danger we face. I was raised to be ready for anything." Lyra listened intently. She had always believed humans were fragile, living, soft lives on distant, peaceful worlds. But Ethan's words shattered that idea. Humans were resilient. They adapted. They learned. They could survive the impossible. He gestured for her to sit. "Do you want to understand me?" he asked. Yes," Lyra replied. Ethan nodded. "Then you must understand humans. My kind has faced dangers that your species could not survive. We have lived in harsh environments, fought predators, wars, and disasters from birth. We train, we learn, and we adapt. That is why I can fight, why I can protect you, why I can survive situations that might overwhelm others." Lyra's mind whirled. She had always seen aliens as the superior species, with advanced technology, strategic minds, and long lives. And yet here was a human, one man capable of feats she had never dreamed of. You are extraordinary," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "I am only human. We do not boast. We do what is needed to survive, to protect those we care for. That is all." Lyra studied him, realizing that his quiet nature was not weakness but strength. Humans could hide their abilities, conceal their true power, and act with intelligence and precision. She thought about the garden attack, the way he had moved, the calmness in his eyes. Every motion had been perfect, every strike precise. He had saved her life without hesitation. "Have you always been like this?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Since I was young. My world taught me to adapt, to notice danger, to stay calm even, in fear. That is why I can do what I do. I do not fight for glory. I fight because it is necessary." Lyra felt a mixture of awe and fear. She had married a quiet man, someone who seemed simple and gentle. But now she realized she had married someone far more capable than most aliens could imagine. Over the next few days, Lyra observed Ethan closely. He helped with palace affairs, assisted with guests, and carried out daily routines with quiet efficiency. But every now and then, she would catch him noticing something others missed. A minor security flaw, a suspicious glance from a visitor, a hidden trap in a new device. He acted without drawing attention to himself, quietly fixing problems before they could grow. She began to understand something else. Humans were underestimated because they were unpredictable. Aliens relied on rules, patterns, and technology. Humans relied on instinct, adaptability, and quick thinking. That made them dangerous in ways alien species could not anticipate. One evening, Lyra accompanied Ethan on a walk through the palace gardens. The twin moons reflected off the water, and the soft glow of lights gave the scene a dreamlike quality. "You carry yourself differently," Lyra said softly. "You notice things. You are ready for danger, even when there is none." Ethan smiled faintly. "It is how humans survive. We are trained to expect the unexpected, to stay calm when others panic, to act when others hesitate." Lyra nodded slowly. "I underestimated humans. I underestimated you." Ethan did not respond. His calm eyes watched the garden, his posture relaxed but alert. Lyra felt a growing respect and admiration for him. She also felt a hint of fear. Humans were capable of extraordinary things her people might not survive if faced with them. The palace staff soon began to notice Ethan's quiet influence. Guards spoke in hushed tones about the human who could move faster than any alien warrior. Servants whispered about the calm man who had saved the noblewoman without a single mistake. Even Lyra's family began to see him differently, not just as her husband, but as a force to be reckoned with. Lyra felt a mix of pride and uncertainty. She had married a quiet human, but she now realized he was more than she could have imagined. He carried secrets in the shadows, powers and skills hidden behind a calm smile, and as much as she admired him, she wondered how far his abilities could reach. One night, as the palace slept, Lyra sat alone in her room, thinking about what Ethan had told her. Humans were different, yes, but their strength was in being underestimated. Their courage, their intelligence, and their resilience made them a hidden force in the galaxy. She had thought her life would be calm, married to a quiet man. But now she knew that calm could hide extraordinary power. Ethan entered the room quietly, holding a cup of warm tea. He set it down beside her and smiled. "You think too much," he said softly. Lyra laughed, though her thoughts were still heavy. "I cannot help it. I see the truth now. Humans are not what I thought, and you are not what I thought." Ethan knelt beside her, placing a hand over hers. "You only need to know this, Lyra. I will protect you. That is all that matters." Lyra looked into his calm eyes and saw the truth. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that made them powerful. Her husband was quiet, gentle, and simple in appearance. But beneath that quiet, he was capable of extraordinary things. And for the first time, Lyra understood that the galaxy had no idea what humans were truly capable of. The stars stretched endlessly around the palace fleet as Lyra's convoy moved between planets. Ships glimmered like distant jewels against the black void of space, their sleek hulls designed to impress and intimidate. Lyra stood on the observation deck of the lead ship, watching the stars streak past. She felt a quiet tension in her chest. Since the attacks on the palace, she could not shake the feeling that danger was always close. Ethan stood beside her, calm and quiet as always. He had been observing the convoy, noting every detail with a precision that made Lyra's mind race. He did not speak unless necessary, yet his presence was enough to make her feel safe. Suddenly, alarms blared across the ship. Red lights bathed the deck as a holographic display showed a swarm of unknown ships moving at high speed toward the convoy. Pirates, mercenaries, or worse, they did not slow, and their intent was clear: capture the noblewoman or destroy the convoy. "Ethan," Lyra said, her voice tight. "What do we do?" He drew his sword, even in zero gravity, the blade glinting in the emergency lights. "We fight," he said simply. "Stay close." The first wave of attackers struck. Their ships were faster than expected, weaving in and out of fire, but Ethan was ready. With calculated commands, he directed the human and alien crew, combining tactics that the attackers could not anticipate. He moved through the corridors of the lead ship like a shadow, a sword in one hand and a small energy pistol in the other. Lyra watched in awe. Even in zero gravity, Ethan moved effortlessly, slicing through doors, disabling enemies, and protecting the crew. He combined speed, intelligence, and courage in ways that made the alien guards pause in amazement. Where they relied on technology, he relied on observation, intuition, and adaptability. One attacker tried to breach the observation deck. Ethan was there in an instant, deflecting the plasma blade with a flick of his wrist. He moved like water, flowing around obstacles, disarming, redirecting, and striking with deadly accuracy. Lyra felt her heart pound. This quiet human, her husband, was more than any warrior she had ever known. "Stay behind me," he said again, glancing at her. Lyra obeyed, ducking behind a console as sparks flew around them. Ethan fought with calm determination, never losing focus. Each move he made was calculated, every strike effective. He did not rely on brute strength alone. He adapted, improvised, and stayed ahead of his enemies. The attackers were skilled, but they were not prepared for Ethan's human ingenuity. He used the ship's systems to his advantage, diverting power to doors, creating traps, and using gravity, controls to throw attackers off balance. One by one, they fell or fled. Lyra realized something that made her heart race even faster. Humans were underestimated because they were unpredictable. Aliens relied on patterns and technology, but humans relied on creativity, instinct, and quick thinking. Ethan was proof of that truth. A larger ship appeared, its hull covered in armored plates, weapons bristling. Its captain, a towering alien warrior, opened a communication channel. "Surrender the noblewoman," the voice boomed, "or your fleet dies." Ethan looked at Lyra. "Are you ready?" She nodded. He moved forward, not with hesitation, but with quiet confidence. The crew watched as he entered the central corridor of the enemy ship, his sword gleaming. The battle inside the ship was a blur. Ethan used every skill he had: hand-to-hand combat, swordplay, quick thinking, and even small tricks with the environment near. Lyra paced in her private chamber, her mind racing. After the ambush in space, she realized that her quiet human husband was far more than she had imagined. Ethan had not only fought with skill, but had anticipated attacks, adapted to unexpected situations, and turned every disadvantage into an advantage. The thought of what humans could accomplish made her heart pound. Ethan entered the room quietly, carrying a small data pad. "I have been analyzing recent movements," he said. His calm voice contrasted sharply with the tension in Lyra's chest. "There is a faction planning something larger. They aim to destabilize the sector and take control of weaker planets." Lyra froze. "How do you know?" she asked. "I noticed patterns the others did not," he replied simply. "Signals, troop movements, supply chains. They think no one observes, but I do." Her eyes widened. Humans were clever, she thought. They noticed details aliens overlooked, understood tactics differently, and used ingenuity instead of brute force. "What can we do?" she asked. Ethan's calm demeanor never wavered. "We prepare. We use strategy, patience, and precision. We exploit their overconfidence." For the next days, the palace became a hive of quiet activity. Ethan trained the human and alien guards, teaching them techniques that combined instinct, creativity, and adaptability. Lyra watched, amazed, as humans and aliens learned to move together, blending alien technology with human strategy. She realized that humans were not just warriors. They were teachers, innovators, and leaders in ways her people rarely acknowledged. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lyra worked together to uncover the full extent of the alien faction's plan. They discovered secret bases, hidden supply lines, and spies embedded in noble houses. Lyra had always been clever, able to navigate politics and intrigue. But Ethan brought a new perspective: unpredictability. He saw solutions that she had never imagined, strategies that defied conventional logic yet promised success. One evening, while reviewing maps in the strategy room, Ethan looked at Lyra. "They believe humans are weak. That is their mistake," he said. "We can use it against them. They underestimate what we are capable of." Lyra nodded slowly, understanding the depth of his words. Humans' quiet strength, adaptability, and creativity gave them an edge even against more powerful foes. She had thought the galaxy was ruled by strength, technology, and tradition. Now she realized that intelligence, courage, and unpredictability mattered just as much, sometimes more. The first strike came sooner than expected. A convoy of enemy ships moved toward a critical planetary hub. Ethan had anticipated the attack and prepared a clever trap. The enemy expected a direct confrontation, but instead, Ethan had arranged the ships in a formation that forced the attackers into a narrow corridor of space. They could not maneuver, could not escape, and were vulnerable to precise strikes from the fleet. Lyra watched from the command center as Ethan directed operations. He did not shout orders. He gave quiet, precise instructions. The ships moved, as if guided by intuition, responding to threats before they even appeared. Within minutes, the enemy was trapped, their ships disabled, their strategy undone. On the ground, alien soldiers and human allies executed Ethan's plan with efficiency. His guidance combined instinct and careful calculation. No one had ever seen humans lead with such clarity and courage. Lyra's heart swelled with pride. She had married a quiet human, yes, but he was now a force capable of shaping battles, saving lives, and defeating enemies who thought themselves invincible. After the victory, Lyra approached Ethan. You did this," she said softly. He shook his head. "We did this," he replied. "Humans, aliens, all of us together. I only guided." Lyra studied him. His humility was as remarkable as his skill. He did not crave glory, did not seek recognition, and yet his presence changed everything. She realized that the galaxy underestimated humans not because they were weak, but because they were patient, clever, and willing to act when others hesitated. The alien faction's leader was forced to retreat, humiliated and unprepared for the unexpected human strategies. Lyra's allies celebrated, but she and Ethan remained calm. They knew the faction would regroup, plan again, and test them further. The galaxy was vast, and threats were never fully gone. That night, Lyra walked through the palace gardens thinking about everything she had seen. Ethan appeared silently beside her, as always. She turned to him, her voice filled with awe. "I understand now. Humans are not weak. They are extraordinary." Ethan smiled faintly. "We survive by learning, adapting, and protecting what matters. That is all." Lyra's heart swelled with admiration. She had married a quiet man, someone who had seemed simple and gentle, but he had revealed the truth. Humans were clever, resilient, and formidable in ways the galaxy could not anticipate. She realized that with him by her side, no threat was too great, no enemy unbeatable. The stars above reflected off the palace, towers shining like distant promises. Lyra held Ethan's hand, feeling the quiet strength in his grip. She understood something profound. Humans were underestimated not because they lacked power, but because they used it differently. Their advantage was in their unpredictability, their courage, and their intelligence. And now, with her human husband at her side, Lyra felt a new sense of hope. Together, they could face any challenge the galaxy threw at them. Together, they were unstoppable. For the first time in her life, Lyra truly understood the human advantage. The galaxy was vast and quiet, yet it seemed to hum with unseen tension. Lyra stood on the balcony of her palace, staring at the stars, feeling a strange mix of awe and anticipation. The past weeks had changed everything. She had married a quiet human, Ethan, a man who seemed gentle and ordinary, but now she knew the truth. He was extraordinary. The alien faction that had attempted to destabilize her sector had regrouped. Intelligence reports indicated they were preparing a final strike. A massive fleet aimed at crushing Lyra's allies and securing control over key planets. Lyra felt a chill run through her. The danger was real, and failure was not an option. Ethan joined her quietly as he always did, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We are ready," he said simply. Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of worry and admiration. "Are we really ready? They outnumber us. They have technology we cannot match." Ethan smiled faintly. "Humans do not always match strength with strength. We match it with strategy, adaptability, and courage. That is our advantage." Lyra nodded, realizing the depth of his words. Humans were underestimated because they approached challenges differently. While aliens relied on sheer power, humans used intelligence, creativity, and unpredictability to turn situations in their favor. Ethan had shown her this time and again. The fleet arrived faster than expected. Massive ships filled the horizon, bristling with weapons and glowing energy shields. The alien faction believed victory was assured. They had underestimated the HFY, quiet human who now stood at the heart of Lyra's strategy. Ethan moved calmly through the command deck, issuing quiet instructions. Human and alien crews worked together seamlessly, responding to threats before they even materialized. Lyra watched, amazed, as Ethan anticipated enemy maneuvers, used terrain and technology creatively, and turned disadvantages into opportunities. The first wave of attackers struck. Energy blasts tore through space, but the fleet moved with precision. Ethan's strategy was clear: use speed, misdirection, and human ingenuity to disrupt the enemy's formation. He had studied their tactics, predicted their movements, and prepared traps that no alien general could have foreseen. One of the enemy ships tried to flank the convoy. Ethan's quick thinking turned the ship into a trap. Gravity fields, energy, deflectors, and carefully timed strikes forced the enemy into a narrow corridor unable to maneuver. Lyra watched in awe as the ship was neutralized without unnecessary loss of life. On the surface, ground forces faced heavily armored soldiers, yet Ethan's strategy extended beyond the stars. He coordinated teams with human adaptability, improvisation, and clever use of the environment. Aliens who had underestimated humans were now learning that quiet strength and intelligence could defeat raw power. Lyra found herself beside Ethan in the heat of battle, not as a passive observer, but as a participant in the strategy. His calm guidance allowed her to make decisions she had never imagined possible. Together, they anticipated the enemy's moves, countered ambushes, and saved lives that would have been lost to arrogance and overconfidence. Hours passed, but the human-led strategy never faltered. The alien faction's leaders realized too late that they had miscalculated. They had assumed humans were weak, predictable, and simple. Ethan's calm, clever approach shattered those assumptions. One by one, enemy ships were disabled or surrendered. Key planetary positions were secured. The final strike turned into a decisive defeat for the attackers. After the battle, silence fell over the galaxy like a soft blanket. Lyra looked at Ethan, standing quietly amid the celebration of others. He was calm, as always, but she now understood the full weight of his presence. He had not sought glory. He had acted with precision, courage, and humility. Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. You saved them. You saved everyone. And you did it quietly, without boasting." Ethan's calm eyes met hers. "We saved them together. Humans, aliens, everyone who followed the plan, I only guided," Lyra smiled.